Hello, this is Tom Still from the Wisconsin Technology Council, and thank you for joining us on today's edition of WISBusiness.com, the show. The show is produced in conjunction with the Tech Council and WISBusiness.com, and with the help of our sponsors, BDO, UWM, and Exact Sciences. Hello again, and welcome to the show. Our Crossing the Coronavirus Chasm series continues with a number of events we have coming up. March 17th is our Tech Summit. Our keynote speaker is Tracy Rotter. She's a veteran of Google Ventures, and she's going to talk about those intersections between emerging companies and major companies. By the way, 80 emerging companies will be meeting in speed dates with 22 major companies during that event. March 24th, we're going to talk about the $100 million question, Wisconsin Fund of Funds. And a little later here in the show, we're going to hear from Missy Hughes, the Secretary of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, on that subject and more. April 1st, we're going to talk about the future of the state's top public research universities with Chancellors Becky Blank from UW-Madison and Mark Money from the UW-Milwaukee. And at the bottom here, you can see a couple of our other recent events. Well, now we're going to hear from Missy Hughes, Secretary of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. So welcome, Secretary Hughes.
Hi, Tom.
Well, today we'll talk a little bit about the governor's proposal for a $100 million state investment in a fund of funds, as well as other things that are in the WEDC budget that you think are of high interest. Tell us first, how do you think the $100 million state investment in a privately matched fund of fund, and again, this is investment, not a grant, not a loan, but an investment, will help all of Wisconsin?
Well, I think what's really important to keep in mind is we have entrepreneurs all around the state who are doing incredible work. And, if somebody has an idea and they want to take it to market, it's incumbent on all of us to support them. It's a big risk to take something to market. And so if we can stand behind and support those entrepreneurs who are often solving problems or creating jobs, that's where we want to be.
Very good. One of the opportunities presented by the governor's proposed fund of funds is attracting outside capital. There's a lot of capital that's going to come to play in Wisconsin and has over time. But why is it important to kind of draw in some other investors who are looking at the state?
Well, right now, if you look at the venture capital arena, about 85% of venture capital is invested on the coast, whether it's in New York or Boston or San Francisco. That means that the other 15% is shared by all of us in the Midwest and in the Rockies and down in the South. And so what we want to do is create a magnet for some of that venture capital. And by saying, as a state that we stand behind our entrepreneurs, I believe that that will really attract some of that capital that's, sitting on the coast right now. We want to bring that to Wisconsin.
Very good. And this is, of course, one major piece of the WEDC budget proposal. And there are others. There are other pieces that are going to kind of continue your work in terms of the recovery, the bounce back from COVID-19 in Wisconsin. So tell us about some of the other major highlights.
Well, one of the biggest pieces of the governor's proposed budget is a $200 million investment in our small businesses around the state. And as we saw during the pandemic, these small businesses are the lifeblood of Wisconsin. These are the little trucks that are driving by you on the highway, or the sole proprietorship that is coming and doing some work at your house, or the cafe that you're going to with your family in order to enjoy some good Wisconsin food. So it's really important that we help those businesses get back on their feet, because they're critical to the quality of life in Wisconsin, and critical to those business owners, critical to the employees. So it's really important that we support them. And then the governor has included other provisions in his budget that really go towards supporting the organizations around the state that support our businesses. I mean, you wouldn't believe, Tom, how these organizations around the state have provided support for our communities and our businesses through this pandemic, and they need help too. And then finally, the governor has identified about $10 million specifically to assist diverse-owned businesses. Our businesses of color were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and they too are critically important in our communities, and we want to get them the support that they need.
Thank you, Secretary Hughes. You know, there was a reference, of course, in our interview with Secretary Hughes to the state budget process, and we wanted to tell you a little more about how that works. So here's the very brief version. State agencies start making their budget requests in the fall of even numbered years. So in this case, 2020. The State Department of Administration compiles all those ideas and works with the governor's office on deciding what's in or out. Uh, Governor Tony Evers proposed his 2-year budget, a biennial budget, on February 16th. It was a $91 billion all funds budget, meaning federal, state, and other sources. And that budget in brief is posted on the Tech Council's website. And now the committee work begins. The budget is now in the hands of the legislature's Joint Committee on Finance, which is made up of 16 members from both houses. Republicans hold 12 of those seats by virtue of their majorities in the Senate and the Assembly. Public hearings will be held. The committee votes on budget provisions, basically agency by agency or program by program. And this is where the $100 million fund to funds proposal will be taken up. And it's one of the most powerful such panels in the country. Usually when the budget is completed by the Joint Finance Committee, there's a big head start in terms of what both houses take a look at. Once it moves to the Senate and the Assembly for review, that could include more hearings or executive sessions, meaning votes by respective committees in both houses. And it bounces back and forth between those houses. And if there are changes or major differences, there's a conference committee of the legislature that may come together to reconcile those. Then it's back to Governor Evers. The full bill goes back to him for review, possible line item vetoes, which are among the most extensive of any governor in the country. And they can be overwritten by a 2/3 vote in both houses, but that doesn't happen all that often. The goal is to have the budget signed into law in time for the start of the state's new fiscal year on July 1st. I want to tell you a little more about the Wisconsin Governor's Business Plan Contest. There were 251 qualified entries, and we're down to the point where 55 semifinalists have advanced. Those semifinalists are spread among 4 categories: advanced manufacturing, business services, information technology, and life sciences. Those are our 4 standing categories. A lot of diversity around the state. 31 different communities are represented statewide. And 18 of the 55 entrants are women, 13. Thanks again to our sponsors, BDO, UWM, and Exact Sciences. We'll see you next time.